Hello, welcome to Read Aloud number one for the book The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. Um, so, let's do it. Chapter 1 The New Guests. Keith, the boy in the rumpled shorts and shirt, did not know he was being watched as he entered room 215 of the Mountain View Inn. Neither did his mother or father, who both looked hot and tired. They had come from Ohio and for 5 days had driven across plains and deserts and over mountains to the old hotel in California foothills, 25 miles from Highway 40. The fourth person entering the room, 215, may have known he was being watched, but he did not care. He was Matt, 60 if he was a day, who at the moment was a bellboy. Matt was replaced worn out light bulbs, renewed washers and leaky faucets, carried trays for people who telephoned the room service to order food sent to their rooms, and sometimes prevented children from hitting one another with the croquet mallets on the lawn behind the hotel. Now Matt's right shoulder sagged with the weight of the one bag he was carrying. Here you are, Mrs. Greeley, rooms 215 and 216, he said, setting the small of the bags on the luggage rack at the foot of the double bed before he opened the door into the next room. I expect you and Miss Gridley will want room 216. It is a corner room with the twin beds and a private bath. He carried the heavy bag into the next room where he could be heard opening windows. Outside, a chipmunk chattered in a pine tree, and a chickadee whistled. The boy's mother looked critically around the room 215 and whispered, I think we should drive back to the main highway. There must be a motel with a vacancy sign someplace. We didn't look long enough. Not another mile, answered the father. I'm not driving another mile on a California highway on a holiday weekend. Did you see the way that truck almost forced us off the road? Dad, did you see those two fellows on the motorcycles? Began the boy and stopped, realized he should not interrupt an argument. But this place is old, protested the boy's mother. We have only 3 weeks for our whole trip. We had planned to spend the 4th of July weekend in San Francisco, and we wanted to show Keith as much of the United States as we could. San Francisco will have to wait, and this is part of the United States. Besides, this used to be a very fashionable hotel, said Mr. Greeley. People came from miles around. 50 years ago, said Miss Greeley, and they came by horse and buggy. The bellboy returned to room 215. The dining room opens at 6:30, sir. There is a ping pong in the game room, TV in the lobby, and croquet on the back lawn. I'm sure you'll be very comfortable. Matt, who had seen guests come and go for many years, knew there were two kinds. Those who thought the hotel was a dreadful old barn of a place, and those who thought it was charming and quaint, so quiet and restful. Of course you will be comfortable, said Mr. Gridley, dropping some coins into Matt's hands for carrying the bag. But this big hotel is positively spooky, Miss Gridley made one last protest. It's probably full of mice. Matt opened the window wide. Mice? Oh no, ma'am, the management wouldn't stand for mice. I wouldn't mind a few mice, the boy said, as he looked around the room at the high ceiling and the knotty pine walls and the carpet so threadbare that many of the roses had almost entirely faded. The one chair with the amicaster on its back and a wash basin and towel racks in the corner of the room. I like it here, he announced. A whole room to myself. Usually I got to cot in the corner of the motel room. His mother smiled, relenting, and then turned to Matt. I'm sorry. It's just that it was so hot crossing Nevada. We were not used to the mountain driving. Back on the highway, the traffic was bumper to bumper. I'm sure we would be very comfortable. After Matt had gone, closing the door behind him, Mr. Gridley said, I need a rest before dinner. 400 miles of driving in that mountain traffic, it was too much. And if we're going to stay for the weekend, I had better unpack, said Mrs. Gridley. At least I'll have a chance to do some drip drying. Alone in room 215 and unaware that he was being watched, the boy began to explore. He got down on his hands and knees and looked under the bed. He leaned open the window as far as he could and greedily inhaled deep breaths of pine-scented air. He turned the hot and cold water on and off in the wash basin and slipped one of the small bars of paper-wrapped soap into his pocket. Under the window, he discovered a knothole in the pine wall down by the floor, and squatting poked his finger in the hole. When he felt nothing inside, he lost interest. But Keith opened his suitcase and took out an apple, several small cars, a sedan, a sports car, an ambulance about 6 inches long, and a red motorcycle half the length of the cars, which he dropped on the striped bedspread before he bit into his apple. He ate the apple noisily in big chomping bites, then laid the core on the bedside table between the lamp and the telephone. Keith began to play, running his cars up and down the bedspread, pretending that the stripes on the spread were highways and making noises with his mouth. Vroom, vroom from the sports car, and wee, wee from the ambulance, and ba, 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 ba from the motorcycle, up and down the strips. Once Keith stopped suddenly and looked quickly around the room as if he expected to see something or someone. When he saw nothing unusual, he returned to his car. Vroom, vroom, bang, crash. The sports car hit the sedan and rolled off the highway. Motorcycle came roaring to the scene of the crash. Keith, his mother, called from the next room. Time to get washed for dinner. Okay, Keith parked his cars in a straight line on the bedside table beside the telephone, where they looked like a row of real cars, only much, much smaller. The first thing Miss Gridley noticed when she and Mr. Gridley came into the room was the apple core on the table. She dropped it with a thunk into the metal wastebasket beside the table as she gave several quick little sniffs of the air and said, looking perplexed, I don't care what the bellboy said. I'm sure this hotel has mice. I hope so, muttered Keith.